So welcome to Bunny's Designs. I wanted to go through my collection of colouring books, but I wanted to show how I started colouring. Even though I bought my first couple of colouring books from the pound shop, there were some quite nice designs. Some of the patterns I knew I wouldn't use, and some I quite liked. So I bought 2 or 3 from the pound shop, but I was still a bit scared of even colouring in the pound shop ones. So I photocopied a few pages and had a play. Because I liked the image and I wanted to make a good job, so I tried it with the Graphitint, which is the kind of muted greys from Derwent, watercolour, different watercolours, Caran d'Ache and watercolours, and I was testing it to see if it went through. So that was my basic, and I did that in the car actually. There is a video of me colouring in the car, and I'm playing about with these Graphitints. So I had a bit of a play, and because it was a pound shop, this is how I first came up with the idea of watercolouring, which is taking a small amount of colour and using a damp brush, pushing it about the page to get a really nice watercolour effect, but without a lot of water. And I quite like that effect. These were the Graphitints, and I did kind of pull the page out, and I was playing about again with the colour of the Graphitints. They're not as vibrant, but they have their own unique kind of space. So for my daughter, for the last year, she was doing her exams and she got quite stressed, so I bought her the Menagerie. I have no idea what he's doing in it at all. So I do apologise. So I bought the Menagerie, and again it was her book, so I photocopied them, and these are the Hydrus watercolours. So again, I had a play, some things I liked. I didn't like the yellow, so I did another one of that one, and I did a couple of this ones. I didn't like the yellow again in there. And again, the bottle of ink I spilt. And then I progressed to the Colin Thompson colouring in book, and that was one of my first expensive buys, and I was kind of like still afraid to play in there, and what if I didn't like the colours? So the first photocopy I played with ordinary watercolour, the professional watercolours, again to see if it would go through as a test, and also play with colours. And I used quite bright colours here, and I didn't like them. So I photocopied it, but I can't find it at the moment. I photocopied this double page, again quite a few times, and came up with the idea that I liked the Derwent watercolour pencils. Alfie is just being a bad puppy today. Sorry. So I quite like these paler colours, and so that's what I decided to do. Hopefully setting is in his bed now in the kitchen, so I do apologise. So I quite like these Derwent watercolour pencils. So that gave me the idea for this particular book to work with the Derwent pencils, because I like the colours and I like the way of working. I think these may be ink 10s, actually they're a little bit brighter. Yes, that's the apple green. So I decided to work with the Derwent pencils in bigger spaces, because there are bigger spaces. So this particular way of working didn't work for me, but it evolved, and now I can use the bigger spaces with my watercolour pencils. So that is how I started. Again, I photocopied things and coloured them in. This is actually a napkin that I photocopied and coloured it in, and then started to play with colour. So that's how I got started. But I say I always like to photocopy first. And then I was at a model railway show, and I didn't take anything with me, and of course I thought I'd do Grizzly. So you can always play about, and again it's watercolour. In fact, I think actually somebody photocopied it for me, so it's a photocopy, because I wanted to see just how thin you could watercolour on without going through. So that gave me quite a good background, so that any kind of paper I found myself colouring on, I knew I wouldn't go through. So again, I found a few for £1 or £2. Some I like the reality ones. Some of the other patterned ones I find a little bit too kind of monotonous is probably the better word. And then recently I found these in the pound shop, which I thought were really nice because they have like an ivory background. So they are a very fine detail. So they would work perfectly with a little fine brush. So there's a couple of those, and I really like them. So I've bought about 6 or 7 of each one, because some of them I really like. I think I've actually started colouring this one, but again I think it is actually in another book. So you can find some quite nice colour books in the pound shop, and I found another 2 yesterday, so I'll go through those next. So I always try and have a quick look in a pound shop or a bargain shop, and I think I picked this one up as well with the butterflies. And again, I think some of them I will photocopy and cut out and use in my napkin journal, because some of them I quite like. But these are all butterflies. And I'd forgotten I'd got this book. I found it while I was looking through. So some other ones I'd found at the pound shop, or for a couple of pounds, were these 2 adult colouring books, and I actually took them apart because I was going to use them with the marker pens that I quite like. The chameleon marker pens are quite nice if you've got poly hands, because they're chunky and you can pull the tops off them, and you can refill them. So I have 2 colour books, which I've taken apart and kind of go through looking for certain things, and I will probably use this in my napkin journal as well, to give me some floras and things, and some of them are really kind of realistic and quite nice. Others I don't particularly like, but if you're with any luck you'll like one side if you don't like the other. So I've got those 2 kind of cheapy ones, a couple of £1 each, cut up ready to use. So I'll just bob those back. I've recently got those from the Abbey, and again there's some I like, some that I really like to do, and then some patterns that I think I will not be colouring them in. And that kind of leads to probably half a dozen other ones which are £1. And I say some of them I really like, so you could actually make that quite a Christmassy one if you wanted. And other patterns I would find too monotonous. I was playing with the markers in that one. And then this is the harder backed version, so I think this was a couple of pounds. And these are single sided. So again, there's a Christmassy one there with the Christmas baubles. And I haven't been through these for a while, so sometimes it's quite good to get them out and have a bit of a play. And I found this one, so I photocopied a lot of these because I wanted to use them with marker pen. And marker pen goes through, so you can either go through your book, or you can kind of think, well, I'm not going to damage the book because I like the page behind it, in which case you then have to kind of say, right, I will, oopsie, I will photocopy them, colour them in marker, and I've still got the book. And this is what I did with this one. I've actually bought this one again because there was the thumper, but it's a good practice. So I haven't actually, this is my version, because when I went to the works they were £5, so I decided I needed the full set. And I had a play, and again I didn't photocopy it, but I used them in a different way. And I loved his head, but I didn't like his body. So I thought, well, I'll use this one as a practice. And we started the owl. I think I did a couple of videos with the owl. So I bought the other book again, but I can probably give her that for Christmas actually, because I haven't used this one. So sometimes it's good to wait. It's good to wait because I think they are the full price in WH Smith's in the UK, but other times you can find them on offer. Oh, hi DRD Mum and anybody else that's joining us. Just going through my my collection of colour books. But they're quite fine work. But what I've actually got into the system of doing is using different supplies in different ways. So I liked this particular way of using the Dr. Martens Hydrus, because they're very vibrant, they're very vivid, very bright colours, and I quite like that. So I thought I would always use the Dr. Martens pH Hydrus liquid watercolours in these particular books, this set of 3 books. I thought that's what I would do, because it lends itself to some very vivid colours, and not stick with the natural colours of real life, which I quite like to do sometimes. So this is kind of my imaginary made up bright vivid colours. So that was those, which I want to really put away if I can. And then of course we have our Imagimorphia and Animorphia. And again, I found myself wanting to work in watercolours. So this is with the Cotman watercolours, and I made a palette of, I think it was 12 colours of the Cotman tubed watercolours. So I had 3 tubes of paint, and I made the colour wheel from 3 colours, and so I quite like the effect. They're almost all connected. So I thought for in this book I would use professional watercolours, and that's what I've done. And I liked the vibrant professional watercolours, and then you can use them kind of a little bit more muted, but they gave quite a nice effect. But you change and you evolve as you are doing things. This was I had another technique where I used masking fluid, and I masked out all the web and all the creatures and all the little things. And then I did a black acrylic. I haven't got the acrylic paint with me. A student grade acrylic. And it's a little bit shiny, but it doesn't stick. But a word of warning, if you use your masking fluid, use it very thin. If you use it thick, it soaks into the paper, and then it kind of, you rub the paper off. If you use it quite thin, then you can get away with it. And then, of course, you can colour these whatever you want. So I'd started this one, the panda one, again in the professional watercolours. And in the Animorphia, I think I'd only done one again, which was the deer. And I really love using nice watercolours. Peaceful way of working. But I saw these birds and I thought, Dr. Martin, again the Dr. Martin's PH Hydrus was so bright and vivid. I really thought these birds would work quite well. So that gave me the idea that actually I don't have to use the same thing in the same book. I just pick the image and then decide what I want to use. So that's what I've been doing. So I don't know why that one's in there. So that's what I thought I would do. So I've changed again, but because I did these particular birds, I thought about Joanna's Christmas book, and I had visions of these vibrant colours in here. So sometimes you can be inspired to see other colours. So these were the Dr. Martin's Hydrus, and then I thought, well, actually I've got other paints, so I didn't just stick with the same ones. And again, I was a bit scared to use the particular book, so I did a practice, because on the Joanna Basford Christmas you have a fold out front page and a fold out back page that you can use as a practice. So these were all the Hydrus. Dr. Martin's Hydrus, some colours I liked, some colours I didn't like, but it was a good practice before I actually started on the page. And then I thought, well, actually my hands were quite poorly one day, so I started to play with my Derwent Inktense pencils. And I always thought that the Hydrus were the strongest colours I've ever seen. But these baubles here were, and it's actually come out of the back page, these are actually the Derwent Watercolour Inktense pencils. And the Inktense are so easy to use. You very gently rub a little bit of colour on with a pencil, and then you activate it with water. And I thought that was a really nice way of working. So I didn't have a palette or anything, it was all dry. I just had my trusted little wet, it's actually kitchen paper today because I can't find my baby wipes, and a tablespoon of water. So that has now given way to a new way of me working. So I think this was with the with the Dr. Martin's Hydrus. So I decided that I'm actually just going to pick a page and colour it in with what I like. Now these are the Derwent Inktense pencils, but there's the most beautiful pastel blue here. So you don't have to use the Inktense pencils in such a strong way. You've got such versatility with them, and I hadn't noticed that before. I hadn't played with them properly before. So again, I was really impressed with these pencils. So I've kind of hidden, that was another one I did with a pencil. So I just scratched a little bit of colour in and then activated it with watercolour, with a watercolour brush. With just an ordinary paintbrush with a rigger. But the beauty of it is, if you stroke one tiniest bit of shade, you get a pale. And then if you go over very carefully again, very easily, you get a different shade. So with 4 strokes of one pencil, I got all those shades of colour in there. And so they're really easy to use. And so I decided, and the other thing I thought, I have problems with large spaces, the backgrounds, because working with watercolour, you put too much water on here and it buckles, and I'm not really wanting my pages to buckle. So this particular way of working lends that you can actually colour in large spaces, and I learnt that from the Colin Thompson book. So that is a really nice book. And then there's The Magical Jungle. And I was using this book with watercolours, for watercolouring, to get rid of my palette, and using really unusual colours. Very pastel, because I was using the palettes up. But some colours I wouldn't have put together. So again, that was another experiment. And again, probably want to do something in the backgrounds, because I love this ivory paper, but I don't like the spare colours, and I don't like much to do backgrounds. So that's another thing for me to learn to do. So I sometimes colour in different ways in different books. But I do love the paper. In these 4 books, the paper is quite thick, and it behaves itself quite well. With just a gentle damp brush, and everything stays really flat. So again, a bit of a chicken when it comes to colouring the books. Because I bought this one for my birthday. The girls bought it for me, and I haven't really got into it yet, because it does have some very large spaces. So because I've been filling in the Joanna Christmas book, I kind of traced out some more shapes, so I've completely filled the space. And the clock, which I did in the Graffy tint, again I kind of took the ivy and kind of traced it round, so that I could fill the space and have that really nice ivory paper sitting behind. I love this page, but again, a big space. So on every back of every page there is a design, and on this one it's the holly and the ivy. But if you turn the book long ways, it looks like it's a wallpaper. So I traced the whole page, which was quite a tedious job to do. And I've traced the whole thing. It's gone dark now, sorry about that. I traced the whole thing. So in the Graffy tin, I intend to do the muted, really nice pale holly and ivy in these colours. But then in the front, I'm going to do them with the inked hens, so they kind of sit forward. And so they're quite bright. And it will look like a background and a foreground. Again, with the bird, you know, I've got space, so I've traced lots and lots of parcels, wrapping parcels from this back of here and put them all around. Same with this one, I put extra swirls so that I could kind of, and made some extra baubles as well. Some of them aren't quite as round as other ones. So you can do that again with your colour books. But I love the cream paper in the books. But what happens is when you're working in one book, you get ideas for other books. And so by the time I finish drawing lots of things, I can fill these spaces in. And I can draw on here quite happily because I've practiced in other books, and you get braver. You know, I started on photocopy paper, now I'm actually drawing and adding my own design in somebody else's colouring book. So put some trees or something up here, something of interest. So I can't wait to start in here, but I bought quite a few Christmas ones. So I think I'll probably use the Derwent watercolour pencils here because they are fantastic watercolours, but I can keep the page quite dry. So, and that's very good paper as well, that will take a little bit of, a little tiny bit of a damp brush. So I bought this one, and this paper is as thin as photo paper. And again, I always practice the beginning. So I was practicing with the pencils. And the thing with the pencils is, actually, I don't think this was the pencils. I think this was the art bars, the Derwent art bars. So if you're very careful, you can stop it going through. And I'd got a collection of earthy kind of tones, and I quite like that. So again, I'm using my Derwent art bars in here, but very, very, very dry, because this paper almost goes through. So I'll probably revert back to my Derwent pencils now for this, because I know I can just put lots of colour on here in a dry pencil and then activate it with a damp brush, and then it's not going to go through. But the paper was a little bit thin on that one. And then we have the Harry Potter colouring books. I think I've got another Harry Potter somewhere. I wanted to work in this with acrylics. So I did gesso a few pages. I think it was on this one. So I had gessoed and worked in acrylic. So all this is gessoed, but it's my homemade gesso, and it just makes the pages that little bit stiffer, because I wanted to really work acrylic over acrylic on here. But I actually think I can get some quite nice effects without doing that. So again, I took these out and acrylic them. Sorry, I didn't acrylic them. I used my homemade clear gesso. And it has baby powder in it, so it dissolves to nothing. So this page is really smooth. And then I did a few acrylic washes on the background, just to get some kind of key to them. And I did pull all the pages out at the back as well. I did that on both of them. And that was another one that I was playing about with some acrylics. And I don't think I've done anything in this one. But again, now I've done to the Derwent watercolour pencils, I may actually revert back to those in the Inktense, I think, because I can get the effect I want now, and I won't use the acrylics. And then there's the Fantastic Beasts. So again, big spaces which I now know I can actually colour. So this will be another one for the new year, probably. I think I went a little bit crazy buying colour books. But sometimes you find them for a couple of pounds. So if I find them and there's a couple of images that I quite like, it's a bit thin is this, but you know, it's a couple of pounds. And you can build the colours up as well into a proper watercolour, so I quite like that idea. And then we have the little ones. So I saw these, I think these were a couple of pounds, and they have been quite expensive at some time. These are handy to take with you if you're going out for the day on a long train journey. You know, they're kind of what I call mindless, literally mindfulness. You can just take an image and just colour it in and not think about the last of the image. I mean, just pick a colour and go for it. So I had a bit of a play. On the first page, I always have a play. So of course it's a set, so I had to have the other one. But again, I think these were from the works. They were a couple of pounds. You know, I wouldn't have paid £9. But I just thought they had a few images that I quite liked. So if you were going somewhere on a car journey, if I didn't want to take a big one, I could take these. And they fit perfectly in the front of my pencil box. And then we have the Kirby Roseanne Sketchy Stories, which I absolutely love. I've only coloured, again, the first page to have a play. And this is an Inktense pencil. This is Lagoon, which is the deepest, darkest purple, blue that they have. But I've used it very lightly. And so you don't have to use a lot of colour. And I think I've just done one other there. So quite like the fact that the Inktense can be very vivid or it can be very pale. And I've started this one again and using the pale colours. So they're quite handy to kind of take with you. And then again I found the Great British Landmark, so I thought at some point I can use this. And now I'm using my pencils. I can actually colour on any size that I want. Which leads me to the day before yesterday. Or rather 2 days ago. I had a bit of a spree. And it's awful when you're on Amazon because you just click a button and you don't think much about it. But I saw this one and I've been wanting to do the bunny page. In remembrance of Thumper, the disabled rabbit. I think there's two, but it's the bunny that's... This is really nice, and again it's ivory coloured. So I wanted to do that for Thumper, because he looks like his head's not screwed on right, so he looked just like Thumper. So I bought this, but then decided that the girls would have to give me this for Christmas. So I then clicked buy all three for a bit cheaper, which I don't think it was much cheaper. But I was a bit disappointed because I thought these were hardbacked. Now maybe they are in the US, but in England they're not. But again, it's like photocopy paper, printer paper, but I can pencil in and then use a damp brush and it won't crinkle. So I can't wait to start on these. And again, the Inktense pencils will look fab. So there's my colour sketchbook. I think that's the first one. And then there's book 2. This looks, it's the same kind of paper, I think. And they're all grayscale, so if you want to just put a flat colour on it, you could do, and you'd still end up with quite a nice effect. And then there's book 3. So I think that's going to keep me going for quite some time. And I also had some nice images from this particular book as well, Have a Serene and Magical Christmas. And there was a couple of really pretty ones that I thought I would like to do. And there's some red cardinals somewhere, which I thought, yes, I really like that. I like trying to do it realistically if I can. So I thought for Christmas that would be quite nice to do. And then I found Lizzie Mary Cullen, The Magical Christmas. And these are a little bit more, it's quite nice paper, but it is white. It's not like the Joanna Basford that's like an ivory. And they're a little bit more wacky, these kind of drawings, a bit more probably psychedelic, like 60s kind of twisted, kind of not traditional colours, so patterns. So I thought that would be quite interesting. The candles are kind of all kind of warped and things. So again, I thought that would keep me occupied. Some really nice patterns in there. And I had forgotten that a trip to the pound shop, and this is like photo paper, but they're quite nice designs. They're quite intricate. This is the kind of sketch you would probably do for a professional watercolour. You would sketch this onto watercolour paper and then you would go in. So this is the kind of detail you would need to do to get a fairly nice watercolour effect. And then you would kind of just rub very carefully with an eraser to just leave a very pale image. So I thought some of these were quite well drawn. And for £1, and they had country scenes as well. So of course, if there's 2, I have to have both. And again, there looks to be quite nice detail. So you could probably pencil in with Derwent watercolour pencil and end up with quite a nice little watercolour. Doing it very damp. And again, that's just about the kind of sketch you would do for a watercolour. And then yesterday, I was finally taken out. We actually went to TK Maxx. And I found this book, The Ultimate Travel List Colour Book. 100 Best Places on the Planet to Colour. And I thought, okay, they had actually probably about 20 colour books. And again, I just thought I'd have to have a bit of a go. Yes, so this is actually a live show on Ustream.tv, which is recorded for YouTube. And I have live people talking to me. And one of the ladies has said, you have quite a collection. I didn't think I had many, but over the last 4 days I've acquired 10 new books. Oops. Having said that, these will be wrapped up, so I can't really look at it properly, but there were some quite nice, and I intend to Google these places to actually colour them the proper colours. Some of the others you can make up, but these I would like to colour. And the papers, it's quite nice. It's not as thick as the, it's not the thickest, but it's not the thinnest. So a damp brush would be perfectly okay without damaging the other side. So these will be being wrapped up. I'm not sure about the Christmas ones, but definitely they will be wrapped up for Christmas for me. So I can't touch them until Christmas. I may take the 2 Christmas ones out because I don't think I want to do a Christmas one when it's not Christmas, if that makes sense. But the others certainly will be. They will be put away for Christmas, and I'd rather have something. So that was 5, and they were 2, so that was 7. And I think this is about 10, isn't it? And they were 17. So, you know, if you're going to have a bottle of expensive perfume, I've got 3, 5, 6. I've got 7 colour books, 9 colour books. So that should keep me quiet. That should keep me quiet for a while, and I'm hoping they all go on the shelf. And they're all going to be coloured, I think, unless I revert back to my watercolours, in my little book, my little bag here of my Derwent pencils. And the other purchase I had was a sharpening stand to support. So if you want to sharpen a pencil the professional way without using a pencil sharpener, so it doesn't kind of try and twist the colour away from the wooden casing, this is the way to do it. And I didn't want to do it live online, but I can actually do that now because this is they're $5.99, and you can sharpen to your heart's content, and your fingers are kind of safe. And then I have my little paintbrushes in here, and I haven't put that one away actually. And I like working this way because I have all my colours, and I'm using the pencils, whereas before they were kind of put away for 2 years. I do have my little colour book here, my watercolour book, which I love. But definitely for weekends away, I will be taking this so I can use my pencils. I think I've got my metallics there. And I was using the pewter. I think it goes here, doesn't it? The pewter one. Yeah. But for some reason they've put 2, but I'm going to swap my daughters because they won't have them. They've put 3 rings in. So where you've got 2 in each one, they've put an extra grommet in there. So I've got 2 out of the girls' other 2, so I'll swap them. Because they probably will have 2 with the 2 rings. But I'm not going to give them full sets of pencils. I'm going to split them between them. All the other pencils I can't use anymore because my hands are too bad. So I've got my watercolour pencils, and this is going to allow me to be able to colour big spaces, which my little book doesn't. So I've got the best of both worlds in here. But hopefully I'll be able to colour all of them in there. So I need to put these particular ones away. So these are all my colour books. I don't think I can actually get them all on here. Might be a bit of an avalanche, I think. So I do have quite a few colour books. I don't think I should be buying any more for a while. So thank you for watching.